And I have to say, the first one I was at was in Boston a number of years ago, and it was back in the day of when Second Life was thriving. Anybody remember that? So now I'm wondering what of this meeting is going to disappear from the face of the earth, and I hope it's not open access. As Elizabeth said, I'm the AD for Information Resources at the MIT Libraries. And I just want to contextualize that a bit because it doesn't connote everything. I have responsibility for collections, curation and preservation, acquisitions, metadata, enterprise systems. So it's kind of a life cycle arrangement. I also want to give credit to Ellen Duranso, who's really the brains behind our program for supporting our open access in the libraries and publishing and licensing. And so much of the information here, if anybody really wants to know the real facts and the details, will be from her, not from me, because I'm an administrator. Okay. I wonder if I could have a show of hands. I just want to know how alone I am in the room. Are there any other people that work in academic libraries here? Okay, I'm going to say maybe 10. So 10. Of those people, do you have an open access policy at your institution? There's a couple wiggles like this that I'm not sure what that means. So there's 3. And I know this time that they're not all from MIT, as they were when Elizabeth and I did this at the Charleston conference. So that's great. So let's see what I have to say here. All right, so I think I'm going to contextualize what we do, what the library does at MIT by starting with the MIT mission statement, because there is a couple of remarkable things to me, at least here, and including the generating, disseminating, preserving knowledge. And when I got to MIT just 4 years ago, even the library's mission statement didn't have preserving information in it. It now does. But I think this is the sort of where we start when we talk about how we in the library support our faculty's open access policy and support open access publishing in a variety of ways and open access license terms. It all stems from this mission statement. And the MIT culture is another very important aspect of why our faculty passes to policy, which have them talk to you about in a minute in a video, so with a little bit of upbeat music in case you're starting to doze off. Not all of these items were originated solely at MIT, but some of them have, and many of them were collaborations with others. But this is really important at the Institute, to have open dissemination and open source software movement, W3C, Creative Commons. Hal Abelson was the starter of that, as well as OpenCourseWare. DSpace has been adopted by over 1,000 institutions worldwide, and now there are open access policy and just recently, delivery of courses freely on the internet over the web with MITx and EDX. So this is a part of what the institution does, what faculty are about, and it's palpable, and it's really interesting. So they value dissemination and preservation, and I wanted to make that point here. All right. Now, I'm going to first talk about the open access policy and what it does. Briefly, and I have to read the first line of it, actually. And our policy was passed in March 2009. I should say that first. Harvard passed theirs the year before, and ours was institute-wide. Oh, closer. Are you hearing me okay? I'm a wanderer. I like to move, but I guess I have to stay put. Okay, so ours was institution-wide at the time, and the first line of the policy reads, "The faculty of MIT is committed to disseminating the fruits of its research as widely as possible." Full stop. Okay, and so what MIT has is it gives a non-exclusive permission to exercise rights under copyright, provided articles are not sold for profit, as you can see, and it exists prior to any publisher agreement. So if there's I saw Mark Seeley earlier. I don't know if he's here right now, but a lot of lawyers went into crafting the wording on this, so I'm not going to go into it in toto, but and we met with a lot of people when we did our policy. I think it's also really interesting when the policy was passed, the library, was charged with implementing it, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But what I'd like you to hear now is a video we created with the faculty who were on the original committee that investigated open access at MIT. And I'd like you to hear what they have to say about why they did it. It's one thing for me to say it, but it's another to hear them. And we hope this works, don't we? We think it's going to, don't we? Yeah. Okay. You can tell me if you can hear this.
The MIT faculty open access policy started with a directive from the chair of the faculty to set up a committee to investigate the way the digital world is evolving in terms of scholarly publishing, whether that really is still serving the needs of the faculty or the needs of MIT, or in fact the progress of scholarship.
Journal subscription prices have been going up way, way above the rate of inflation for a number of years. So it's really only people working in universities with access to university libraries, and in particular with access to wealthy Western university libraries, that can get that array of stuff.
As the content has become increasingly in digital formats, we are finding that instead of being able to purchase material as we historically did, we are now renting access. With the digital publication of journals, if we are not able to continue the commitment to buy that content, we lose access to that content. Unlike when you cancel the journal in the old days, you don't have the back run in the basement necessarily anymore.
You can digitally prevent someone from lending someone a copy of a paper, or prevent your students from using it in class, or prevent you even excerpting it and giving pieces to a colleague. And there's a real question about whether that's the right evolution.
So what we did some years ago was pass a resolution that, except in the cases where copyright issues actually prevented us doing so, we would publish all of our articles on the web, and we would do it via the university library. What it'll mean is that all of that research will suddenly become available to the world community rather than being restricted to those libraries that can afford to do it.
An institution has an incentive to have its faculty's research widely diffused. That's how the reputation of an institution is in part judged.
Most faculty want the widest knowledge of their work. They want citation rates to go up, and open access clearly has higher citation rates.
Social welfare is increased. More academics can get access to what their faculty write at a lower cost.
The university library has a database, DSpace, which will take everything that every faculty member publishes and make that freely available.
A quarter of all the papers that have been published at MIT since we passed this policy have actually been deposited to DSpace. 18,000 of these papers are downloaded every month. I was on the original committee at MIT to look at this open access policy. The more we looked at it, the better idea we thought it was. There were minor concerns raised, things like for people who are still not tenured, how would this affect them if they didn't publish in journals that wouldn't allow this? So we built into the policy what we called an opt-out provision, which allowed any faculty member to contact the library and say, I want to opt out of the policy for this paper. And that's a very useful escape hatch to have. I think the policy as a whole also had one very beneficial result, which is that now MIT as a whole can work with that journal and do the negotiating for us. MIT as an institution has a whole lot more clout than I as an individual scholar have.
So the MIT faculty open access policy is a statement by the MIT faculty that their mission to further scholarship is best served if their work is made as openly available as possible. It's a statement by one of the world's leading research institutions about its place in actually the future of scholarship.
The purpose of our research, the reason we do research, is to disseminate it, not to hide it.
We're entering an era where openness is really driving out closed. Open is better for the people generating the information, it's better for the speed of innovation, and it's better for the recipient of innovation.
We're in the business of
creating knowledge and of diffusing that knowledge as widely and as carefully as we can. And this seems to me to be the ideal way to let the fruits of our work and our colleagues' work be dispersed.
Okay, so needless to say that policy is faculty driven, and I say this because it wasn't an administrative mandate. So the administration did not say to the faculty, you must do X, the faculty did. And it doesn't apply to any other authors at MIT. We have a lot of research scientists. They do not come under the auspices of this faculty, nor do our graduate students. So it is definitely a faculty-driven policy. And it is administrated, or not administrated, I would say. It's been the implementation, I should say, and policy interpretation comes under the faculty governance structure. And this committee of the faculty, of which some of those people you just saw speak, sit, actually help the library in its implementation. This is a huge undertaking that we undertook 3 years ago during the economic downturn. So it was not a trivial matter. Nonetheless, this is the faculty committee that advises us, and they've just created a new group called the Open Access Working Group to think about, which is a subgroup of the FCLS, to think about the next steps around, should we be thinking about publishing? Should we be collaborating more with publishers? What should we be doing next to promote this even on our campus? So this is, again, the libraries, and Ellen Duransko in particular will be working with this group. I do want to say, though, that the actual policy, for those of you that don't know it intimately, although we've talked to many publishers, it's the post-print version or the post-peer review version, not the final edited final version. However, as you heard from APS, they preferred that we use the final version and ingest it into DSpace at MIT. So we've worked with publishers all along to determine what version they wanted us to use. We have the right to use the post-print, post-peer review, but several publishers, and they're listed on our website, prefer us to use the final because they want one version out there. Right? We are also interested in the version issues. So when we send an article, when we deposit an article in DSpace, this is a little bit in the weeds, but we carefully either link to the final published, or we say exactly what version it is. And it's a manifest that comes with the article so that people actually know what they've got, because we are greatly concerned about the version too. We devised a process, and we actually had to devise an internal manuscript process for handling manuscripts and authors and name author disambiguation. I mean, it was a whole set of processes that you all are very well aware of that we had to do a piece of all of a sudden in the library, like right away. So that was not insignificant, I have to say. So the big driver, again, is, as you heard from our faculty, is they want to use their articles in teaching. They want to distribute to their colleagues. They want to reuse text and charts. They do not want to seek permission if they've given it away unwittingly, because at the end of the day they sign what they have to sign to get something published. They're often not looking at it. So we really were charged to make it easy for the faculty. Now, how do we really support this whole endeavor? And this is worth noting because in 2006, our provost, who is the now president-elect of MIT, provided 3 years of funding to the library for a new position, a scholarly publishing and licensing consultant. Now, this was explicitly to support MIT authors in retaining reuse rights for their publication and to look at licensing content, hence putting the two together under the same rubric, holistically. We needed to support the then NIH mandate, which Elizabeth mentioned, and then we supported the OA committee, the faculty OA committee that put the motion before the faculty to pass the resolution for the policy. So we hardened the position in 2009, and that is Ellen Duransko, who I mentioned before. Some of you may know her, and if you've had, if anybody's here from your licensing departments, you'll know how vociferous she is in getting the rights for our faculty. And we created this Office of Scholarly Publishing and Licensing in 2010. So she provides a lot of direct support for authors, copyrights, rights retention directly, and she also works on our licensing side, so marrying the two is really important. And this is where the open access policy administration is really sits. So I mentioned that the trials and tribulations of all of a sudden having to manage a whole system of identifying our authors, identifying all their publications, having a workflow stream to get the content, to make sure the permissions are right. It was not a trivial endeavor. We developed a homegrown, as one does when there isn't something on the market that fits your needs, and now we're looking at other possibilities for a management system. And the policy itself actually said we should make it as easy as possible for the faculty, which means don't bug me unless you have to. So we then acquire the content, sometimes from the authors directly, but only as a last resort, from the MIT web, where they post versions, sometimes the right version, sometimes not the right version, as you all probably know if you're looking at that sort of thing. And directly with publishers. At the start, we actually sent out over 400 letters when the policy was passed from the library to publishers saying, this is what our faculty have passed, this is what it means, and we offer to meet with people. That was really interesting. We had delegations of people meeting with us, some coming with their lawyers. We've met successively with some publishers and societies who have changed their stance since the beginning as people got comfortable with the whole concept. It's been a moving target, and it's been a really interesting development to see the progression of our thinking as well as publishers and societies' thinking in this area. Some have reversed their original position. It's just been, it's still, I would say, an evolving area. So that's why I'm really delighted to be here, actually, because I think there needs to be more communication and work with publishers and libraries who are supporting their faculty. It's not, we didn't make this up kind of thing, right? We're supporting the effort of our faculty clearly. So, let's see. And another aspect of supporting this open access and licensing to the best advantage of our authors per our mission is that there's been a lot of community collaborations too that have resulted. Some technical, some policy. And this first one was not, now it's a little bit of a household word, and SWORD stands for Simple Web Service Offering Repository Deposit. It's actually an information exchange to get protocol, to get content from a publisher system, for instance, directly into a repository so that you're not doing that manually. So that was innovative at the time, and now is a little bit more of a household word. We did an experiment with Biomed Central in 2009, and now lots of people are using this. But that was an opportunity to work with publishers to figure out a way to make this easy on both ends. Publishers were continued to be, how are we going to do this one-off thing that you want us to do, right? We want you to help us get our faculty's articles. You have 200 people doing that, that doesn't really scale very well. So everybody's looking for some kind of technical way to make it easy on both sides. For those publishers that were willing to collaborate with us, I should say. And then also in 2009, there was a Harvard letter that was signed by 5 institutions among Harvard, MIT, Cornell, Berkeley, I'm not remembering the 5th, but others have signed on to establish an open access, a compact for open access publishing. And what this specifically was to underwrite reasonable publication charges for authors who wanted to publish in an OA fee-based journal for which they did not have grant money. So the library actually does that subsidizing, but because we have so many authors who are grant funded and do have the funds, it's not been an onerous amount of support, but we still think it's important to be able to give those faculty who don't have research funds the ability to even the playing field a little bit. They can make a choice to go OA if they don't have the money. It doesn't come out of their own coffers. So we thought that was important. I threw in the author rights language here because this is another way in our Office of Scholarly Publishing and Licensing, Ellen works to, in the community to make sure that we have the rights for reuse that our faculty want and that our provost wanted. He said, I don't want the faculty to be worried on a case-by-case basis in their author agreements about reusing their content. Can't you do this in a bigger way across the land so that they can just do their work and not be worrying about what they're signing off? So this is like an impetus from our the highest administration. More recently, the Coalition of Open Access Policy Institutions was created, and I think it was actually last summer. We've met twice in person. And it started out, there were people who had either policies or mandates. It might have been just a school or one department or the whole institution. And as of yesterday, I think, or earlier this week when Utah State came on board, there's now 46 institutions. Why this is important, when it was just Harvard in North America, when it was just Harvard and MIT, it was, it felt like a little bit of a target. And now there's 46 institutions that can actually share implementation strategies, advocate for OA institutions, and learn from one another. So it's nice to have a little broader group of people. I wouldn't say it's a grass fire in any means, but there are more people now working in this sphere, so I think that's great. And now we're working with more, reaching out to more repositories, other kinds of repositories, to talk about automatic and dual deposit strategies. And I think I want to end in saying that it is about a dissemination, but it's also about preservation. We want to have MIT's content. We think we're going to be around. I mean, maybe you all do too for another 200 years, but we've seen a lot of publishers, some of the bigger publishers take over, if you will, some of the smaller publishers in the last 10 years. And so we really want the dissemination and the preservation of MIT's intellectual life is part of our remit, and that's one of the reasons we're been charged to be in the game. So thank you.